Our next speaker is Dr. Ann Johnston. Ann is the Digital Learning Transformation Leader at GE Digital. And previously she was the Global Learning Leader at GE Aviation. So GE is of course the bellwether in so many different ways in terms of a digital industrial leader, but no more so than in learning. And so for those of you who've been fortunate enough to visit Cromptonville, their learning center, you will understand the importance that they place on it. So this morning, Anne is going to be talking to us about making sense of digital transformation in learning. So Anne, thank you for joining us. Anne also happens to be one of my favorite presenters, so I always look forward to hearing her presentations. Please come on.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation, and good morning, good afternoon, depending on which time zone you were in before you got here. I have the opportunity to represent GE and also my personal experience over the last 18 months when I moved from the depths of the industrial on the aviation side of the GE house to now being the CLO of GE Digital in the depths of the technological. I didn't understand at the time when I accepted the role and the opportunity how different the worlds would be. And so part of it today is just a matter of my sharing with you all my process of sense making, or making sense out of the experiences that I've had over the last 18 months. And so I'll give you just a moment to read the session abstract and what I'll be about over the next 19 and a half minutes or so. That notion of digital industrial leadership is something that is emergent. Even that term, digital industrial, didn't really exist before the last 2 to 3 years. And so as we think about that notionality, and as we think about sense making, for me, that action, that springboard into action that is sense making, that notion of putting into words and then action is what I've tried to do not only in this presentation but with my team at GE. And the questions that we ask in the process of sense making is, what's going on? What do I do next? And finally, what don't I know that I need to learn? And so as we look at this, that notion of the fact that at GE, we have proclaimed that we are the world's premier digital industrial company, we transform industry by connecting people, data, machines, living in perpetual motion, we are sensing, predicting, and responding to make the world work better. That's awesome. And when they called me for the job, I have to admit that I said, well, if that's what it is, where in the world do you actually find digital industrial learning leaders? Where do they actually come from? If this is this premier thing, where do they come from? Well, I'm here to tell you that every single one comes from Ohio, specifically Springfield, Ohio. Now, I know that there are a handful of digital industrial premier organizational learning leaders that come from Mansfield, Ohio, but we don't talk about them much because they're in the northern part of the state. So I'm from the Cincinnati area, Springfield, Ohio. And if you need further proof of the fact that digital industrial learning leaders come from Ohio, I'm the one in the middle. And so all digital industrial learning leaders have kind of bad haircuts as kids. So if you were a kid who had kind of bad haircut and totally got tickled by your siblings at the photo opportunity that your parents waited for all year, then you too can be a digital industrial learning leader. The other point of fact that I will share is that we all digital industrial learning leaders have something in common, that we had wildly, incredibly important technologies that we played with as kids. Rob, I don't know if you're still here, but your kids need one of these. I think you can get it on eBay for 25 cents. The Blip. Anybody have the Blip as a kid? This was totally awesome, right? Best Christmas ever in 1977. And the thing that I learned that has helped me throughout my illustrious career in various places and times is the notion that my parents forgot to buy the batteries. And so sometimes you have to put off gratification and you have to just be patient with allowing things to evolve. So as we think about that notion of digital industrial, the journey, and the fact that it's a process, one of the things that my team and I discovered over time is that as we looked and as we explored, we saw that there were phases to this that we could experience. One is analog, and I'm going to use, carrying on from various presentations earlier this morning, I'm going to go ahead and just use exercise as a bit of a metaphor. So analog is this first stage. We do things in an analog fashion. We either write them down, it's old school, it's something that's not yet been digitized, and that's the next step in the process. We take that which is analog, writing down my daily exercise regimen, and then I digitize it in some way, shape, or form. I either create an Excel spreadsheet, or I get one of these fancy exercise bands, and I'm able to track that on my phone now. And that should be the end of it, right? That I've moved, I've transformed, I've come from this place of being analog to suddenly I've digitized and I've dropped the 50 pounds I've been carrying for the last 10 years, right? Is that it? I just need to digitize, I just need to get the technology right?
Exactly the case.
If that was the case, live on, sister, right? Yeah, okay. So no, we have to actually do something beyond just tracking the data and becoming increasingly sophisticated in how we track that data. We do have to do something called, what we call digitalizing. And that's changing behavior based on the data and the analytics. In some quarters, that means monetizing. And so it really depends on what function you're in, what part of the business you're in, and yet this translates over and over again. So part of the story that I'm here to tell you is that notion of generations of moving from analog to digitizing. There is some technology that you need to start using in a different fashion and form, but then there's this next step in the process of actually digitalizing as we move forward. So I'll come back to that. So when we think about being exact in our language, one of the things that I want you to do right now is take out your iPhone, your Android, whatever you might have, and if you don't have one, talk to the person next to you. Look up the word disintermediation. Take a second, look up the word disintermediation, and then ask yourself, or your neighbor, why should we as business leaders care? Notice I'm not saying as HR leaders or as learning leaders. We, friends, are business leaders. And so what is disintermediation, and why should we as business leaders care? There's no prize, there's no GE giveaway. Whoever's first, go ahead and shout it out. You'll have that intrinsic feeling of reward. What's disintermediation?
Removing the middleman.
Removing the middleman, that's awesome! What is your name, kind sir?
Kyle.
Kyle, hello. So Kyle, why is that a good thing? Disintermediation, removing the middleman. I'll repeat what you say because you're not on microphone.
It's important because your consumers and people actually using whatever, the more direct contact they have with people creating, you can get that feedback.
Yeah, so the consumer, the more you're able to connect directly with them without interruption, you're going to get that feedback loop, and in theory, you're going to be able to help them, and you're going to be able to produce for them in a more meaningful way. Is that a fair reiteration? Fantastic. That's a fabulously good thing, right? Until it happens to us, right? When disintermediation occurs to us, and we're the middleman, what? What do you mean? I'm the learning person. How can I be disintermediated? And that's exactly what happened last April to me and my team. And at that moment, folks, I wasn't going through this intellectual exercise of saying, I think I need to make sense of this. And I think in some way, shape, or form, I need to ask the sense-making questions of what's going on here and what might I do next and perhaps could I learn more? No, I was panicked. Complete, full-out panic mode. I had just taken the role and was told in February that I was to help with my team and with the help of Crotonville create a learning experience for all of GE to help them demystify that which they did not yet understand, that notion of being digital and digital leaders. And so my team set forth in very, very good classic fashion of doing some sensing sessions, getting together, having a week in San Ramon, doing very good instructional design. We tested with a number of pilot groups throughout the month of March. And by the time April came around, we had decided that we needed to MOOCify. And we called our friends at EdCast's and we said, we need to MOOCify something. I didn't even know what it meant to MOOCify anything. Didn't quite know that was a verb, right? And so they said, oh yes, absolutely, this is not a problem. Just go ahead, the technology's there, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about it, is what I was told. So the date got closer and closer and we were to launch. And my nerves set in. It wasn't ready, it wasn't right. We hadn't tested nearly enough. We needed more sensing sessions. And so I talked to my friend Mike Pino, who was on the team at the time, And I said, Pino, I need another few days to think about it, but I don't think we're ready to launch. I think we need a few more pilots. And he said, that's fine. Just know that our deadline is August 15th. We're supposed to launch those up the food chain. Think that we're launching on the 15th. So if it's only going to be tax day and it's not going to be launch day, we need to let them know. I said, fair enough, let me sleep on it. And so I did. And how many folks in the room have relocated in this lifetime? You've relocated for a job. And you're on an air mattress. Keep your hands up. On an air mattress at night with a single lamp that you bought at Target for $2.99 on the clearance rack. Yes, yes, okay, we're kindred spirits. Okay, so there I was in my lovely apartment in San Ramon on my air mattress ruminating. Because of course, when you can't sleep, you ruminate, right? We're good learning people. If I just think about it hard enough, it'll come clear. And I had come to the distinct conclusion about 2:30 in the morning Pacific time. I need to sleep. And we're not going to launch. It's not going to happen. We are not going to launch. No way, no how. And I fell asleep feeling this angelic peace pass over me, saying, I've made a decision, and I am good with this decision. 45 minutes later, at about 3:45 in the morning, what would that be, 2:30, help me people, 3:15 in the morning? Between 3:15 and 3:30 in the morning, my cell phone went off. And as I flipped it across the room, because of course, waking up in a panic, it was Mike Pino. He said, Ann, I'm terribly sorry to call you. It's 7:15 here on the East Coast. And I just looked at the data, and we have 350 people signed up for the MOOC. I said, well, that's absolutely impossible. We haven't launched yet. And so that must be a glitch in the system. There's no way 350 people have signed up. He said, oh, well, someone somewhere in Asia did an exact keyword search, and they found all of our notes that we kept online, and they saw that we were only going to allow 300 people in the initial MOOC. And so they put on our social media collab that sign up now because you'll be left behind if you don't. I said, you've got to be kidding. Tell them they can't come. Tell them the party's canceled. And he said, no, Ann, you don't understand. As this goes viral, in the time we've had this conversation, we've had 75 more people sign up. I said, turn it off! You can't do this! Call EdCast, tell them it's all been a big mistake. This isn't going to happen. He said, Ann, I hear the panic in your voice. I completely understand it. You need to make a decision, go, no go. And 50 more people just signed up. And I was like, oh my God, okay, we're going. We're gonna do this, right? It was the scariest, most terrifying moment of my life, and I had been disintermediated, and I didn't even know what the freaking word meant. It was over, and I thought, okay, my resume is pretty new, because I just applied for this job. I think it would be okay. I could probably call a headhunter in the morning, right? All that fear, because it was about me, it wasn't about learning. And I had to get way over my bad self really quickly. And what I figured out is that, yes, I got disintermediated, and it was so cool, and such an incredible opportunity to look at our life as a learning team. Analog, digitized, digitalized, and I found out something pretty cool, that in the past, I had the luxury as a learning leader to have the answers, to offer classes and be the expert. I'm pretty good at being the expert. Ask my team, ask my family. I'm good at being the expert. Disintermediation meant that I had to move into a different way of being, a different way of having a mindset around being digital, where it's a consumer experience. It's no longer I have the answer. My learning populations, they're not even my learning populations, they're their own selves, need to help me understand what they need in a radically different way. And I'm the curator. And my team is a curator. We no longer offer classes per se, we offer learning experiences. And we're trying to stay in this zone through 2017 to really be able in 2018 and beyond, create an organizational ecosystem and to be co-creators with those we're learning with every step along the way. Our philosophy is that notion of co-creation and that notion radically of this being a consumer experience. We want folks to have a similar experience inside GE as they have outside of GE. And so when you think about it that way, if you plan for disintermediation, if you plan to get yourself as the middle person out of the way, one way that we're experimenting and beta testing and doing this is through the notion of user-generated content. We have 26,000 people across GE, which are across all of GE's businesses. And so when I was the aviation CLO, I was responsible for 45,000 folks in the vertical called GE Aviation. Now, my team, we are responsible for 26,000 people, slightly smaller number of people, but across all GE businesses: transportation, healthcare, aviation, power, oil and gas, also global operations centers, global growth organizations. If you're in digital, our team is responsible for figuring and sorting that out. Now, if you think about that, there's a cool opportunity in there, that if we have 26,000 people, then we have 26,000 people who could, in fact, become learning people. Even if half of them are skilled learning people, we have the responsibility and the opportunity to give them the chance to get in front of their peers and their colleagues and to create user-generated content. And so we ran a series of beta tests. And within a 3-month beta test, we have over 50 assets that have been curated from folks all over the system, globally. Part of that is good, and some of it's bad, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect anymore. And so the final thing that I would say is that notion of sense-making is that figure out who your partners are and figure out how you can utilize those partners. I'm very happy with the fact that we're partnered with EdCast's. That's one of the reasons we're all here today. And I'll leave you with that notion of what's going on here. The world is changing. What do I do next? Figure out how you can start doing things differently, and where and how can you disintermediate yourself. Because if you can't, and if you can't learn about that notion of disintermediation and how you might be the middle person and you might be slowing things down and keeping yourself in the way, then I guarantee you, you will be disintermediated, and you may or may not like the impact and the results. So thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.